Selby sign, breaking down the stories every view will unwind. From left to right we'll see the light. It's balance we're chasing, no fighters fight. Curtis Selby talking it straight. Let's hear both sides, let's communicate. Politics and reason, let's find the truth. Curtis Selby's here to bridge it for you. Debates and sides, it's all on the screen. Curtis Selby keeping it keen. Hit subscribe, stay a while, let's dive in deep with Curtis Selby. The combo's unique. Insights, it's all on the screen. Curtis Selby keeping it keen. Hit subscribe, stay a while, let's dive in deep with Curtis Selby. The convo's unique. Curtis Selby talking it straight. Let's hear both sides, let's communicate. Politics and reason, let's find the truth. Curtis Selby's here to bridge it for you. Debates, insights, it's all on the screen. Curtis Selby keeping it keen. Hit subscribe, stay a while, let's dive in deep with Curtis Selby. The combo's unique. The combo's unique. The combo's unique.
Greetings everyone, it is I, your tired midnight blogger, what blogs in this case at 1:33 p.m. Looking at my avatar picture, the guy is too well dressed and his eyebrows too defined, but otherwise not a terrible semblance. Today's topic is next episode in our series on the Constitution. I know I gave it a big, long, confused title, but the simple premise is, why a republic? Of all the many myriad forms of government that there are, why in the world did our founding fathers choose a republic? Did they choose wisely? Would we be able to choose more wisely? Before I dive into the chat, I'd love to invite you, if you are new to the channel, please like, subscribe, all that spiffy stuff that everybody always asks you to do. If you feel like my content is worthy, maybe even think about becoming a member. Memberships, I want to say, start at 99 cents or maybe $1.99. And I need to get on the horn and start giving you guys, like, benefit things. But anyway, friends with benefits, you know. Yeah, I know I'm a dummy. Gonna say hello to everyone in the chat, but first let's also look at, we have a poll going up. What form of government do you think is best? Sadly, I can only put in 4 options, though there are many. Republican, democracy, which, believe it or not, are different things, and it is not just pedantic word things. There really is a true difference between the two. We're not taught that. And also, people are way too smug when they talk about it. Oh, you're just an ignorant troll. You don't know the difference. You don't know how to use the 3 seashells. We've got to start being more patient with our friends who've done the best they can and have been handed a bunch of lies. We're no better than them. Honestly, we probably believe some lies ourselves. But what form of government do you think is best? Republican, democracy, aristocracy, or rule by tired bloggers? So far, rule by tired bloggers. I doubt it will stay up there, but for now is at 60%, meaning 3 out of 5 of you actually believe that rule by tired bloggers would be the best government. I am so thrilled to have such wonderful supporters. I would be a just and benevolent tyrant. But the other 2 of you are evenly split between Republican and Democratic forms of government. Yes, indeed. Hold on just a second here. How did that happen? Okay, so let's go back. We were talking about a goal, 5 super chats, any size, or some, if we get like one huge super chat, say somebody sends a, I don't know, I'll say $20 super chat, one $20 super chat, because I feel like, I should reward you guys for being loyal. But if we get 5 super chats of any size or $20, whichever is easiest for you guys, we'll do a watch party tomorrow. We'll either determine that during this stream, or if we don't, we'll set up a poll, and whatever movie wins the poll when I get up in the morning will be what we do. I see Rule by Tired Bloggers got some more votes, so 2/3 of you think we should have a Rule by Tired Bloggers. Indeed, I would be a benevolent and wise dictator. Let's say hello and promote all you wonderful people, because most of you are creators. We have Lizzie Armstrong. Welcome to another great show on the U.S. Constitution. Hello, Curtis and Cassie. See you if I wake back up in time. With the emojis of a parrot, a house, and I think a galaxy. please check out her material. She has some wonderful videos of the Australian countryside and a spiffy car show, probably some other things too. We have John Pontorero reminding me that E Plebnista was the great creed of the alternate earth that Kirk led to salvation because of his superior knowledge of American government. So the real reason why you listen to me isn't so that we can wisely govern ourselves. It's in the hope that one day you will be able to save a dystopia because of your superior knowledge of government. Also, please check out John Pontorero's content. He's got some of his gigs set up there, and he is a great musician, plays with some wonderful singers, so please check him out while we're checking people out. Resolute Germ is in the house saying hello. Please check out his material. He does lots of watch parties. He's often on the panel with Gorillas, Random Thoughts, and with Admiral Teague. Admiral Teague. I have to enjoy the word admiral just the way Khan was disgusted by it. Yes, please check out this wonderful creator right here. And I forgot to even ask you about the cartoon this week. I'm so sorry. This week has been interesting. Lizzie is in fact up. She's heading to the kitchen for some locally grown Australian coffee, though she does like chocolate. Nice. John Pontorero started this morning adding organic cocoa powder to my coffee for the health benefits, more for that than taste. It was good. Probably will do it occasionally. Not really a flavored coffee fan. I like my coffee like I like my women, strong and black. I honestly don't care what their race is. I just like them. I like them, yes. So, Lizzie Armstrong is also saying, cool, John, sounds nice, yet to find some organic good cocoa here would definitely be nice with other drinks and foods. John is sharing out the link. Share out the links of your stuff, dudes. Let's promote each other. Let's watch each other, not in a creepy way, but let's show each other some love. Give me some love. And John Pontorero's getting the goal started with a 99-cent super chat. So that's the way, guys. Just send in 99 cents as you can 4 times, and we will do a watch party on Sunday night. And I just dropped a dime, so I dropped a 1/10 of a super chat. Ha! And PvP, another wonderful creator. Please check out his musical playlists. Hail to the chief, he's the one we all say hail to. Chief of the stream because he keeps himself so clean. John Pontorero is saying turtleocracy. Dagnabbit. I wish they had let me put in more than 4. They ought to do that. I don't know at what level, but at some level of sponsorship or some level of number of subscribers, you should be able to get a 5th or 6th thing in the poll. Turtleocracy. I like turtles. Remember, Gorillas is doing a movie later Sunday. Oh, that's right. We may move it to Monday. I work Monday too. You guys let me know. Would Monday be a better day for you? Lizzie Armstrong. Yep. Sorry. Would have voted tired blogger, but didn't see it. Will change citizenship to be Secretary of State in that case. Yes, indeed. Lizzie would be a great Secretary of State. And I know you all had your lists. One of these days we need to get the official lists compiled, and we'll see how far we can get into turning our country into a blogocracy. We're doing a night to remember 50s film about Titanic. Right on, right on. And everybody, saying hello to each other because you're a wonderful group of people. All right, I don't know about you, but I've had enough of the music. Okay, let's stop the music and we'll start the talk. Mid Sunday afternoon should be safe, as Gorilla usually goes later. The trouble is, I can't do mid Sunday afternoon. I work, or I do it. We'll figure it out though. We'll y'all just send me some times and we'll figure it out. Worst comes to the worst. I'll do it after. I might do it Tuesday. I might do it Tuesday, but I don't know when I'd do it then. I could do it in the afternoon Tuesday. I could do it almost any time, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. So, but Sunday and Monday, I'd either have to drag my sorry keister out of bed early, or I'd have to do it super late. And I learned with Zardoz that doing it super late while it's fun is also exhausting. So we'll figure it out. We'll figure out a time. And who knows? Maybe I won't get the 5 super chats after all. And of course, PvP works those days. Yeah, doggone it. Okay. Zardoz returns. I should have put in if I'd had a fifth thing, I'd have put in a government by Zardoz. All right. I want to first speak about my sources because sources do matter. And this may get me disqualified by some of you. My main source is going to be Federalist number 10. Hopefully, there's nobody in this chat who would go, "Oh, that's a bad and terrible source." But my second source is not my favorite person, but I think he did do a good job, or at least as far as I've read into it, he's done a good job with this. Some of you may love him, some of you may hate him, and I absolutely understand both opinions. I started out loving him, and I don't know that I ended up hating him, but I ended up deciding that he was not as wonderful as I thought he was. But he's not perfectly bad either. Glenn Beck has a book called The Original Argument. It's basically his attempt at making a case for the Constitution, largely based off of the Federalist Papers for the 21st century. I'm using it partly for some quotes and partly to kind of guide some of my thinking, at least for this episode. I'm not saying I'm going to use it through the whole series, and in fact, I barely picked it up at all. I wish I could find my copy of the Federalist Papers, but it is what it is. You can find the Federalist Papers online. If you've never read them, I strongly advise you to read the Federalist Papers. I don't mean to sound arrogant, but I have come to the conclusion that those who have not read the Federalist Papers don't really have a very good grasp of government. Or at least, I know that sounds arrogant, but I was just blown away by the erudition of these people. So, okay, John Ponerero liked his mom liked Glenn Beck back in the day, and again, I'm not here to try to sell you on Glenn Beck at all. I just think I feel like the little bit I've dug into this book, I feel like he did a good job, or he did a good job with this. I feel personally as if you're guided by the Federalist Papers, you may still go astray, but I don't think you could go as far astray as if you don't. And so we have Resolute Germ giving his take on the Glenn Beck. He's a little kooky, but his research is usually good. Yeah, I think I would concur with that. He, I remember the video that made me 'cause I used to be a big fan. I'm still a big fan. I shouldn't say used to be, but I'm a pretty big fan of Ron and Rand Paul. They're not perfect. They also say some things. Everybody, you dig enough, you will find some statement or some belief that makes you just scratch your head on just about everybody. But but yeah, he did a video about Ron Paul trying to discredit him, and it it had a lot of pretty big holes in it. And it made me wonder what other videos does he have that has big holes in it that I don't see. Um, but again, I'm not here to tell you that he's good or that he's bad. I'm just letting you know he is one of the sources I'm relying on today. PvP is a Canadian. I'm happy to hear about this and can't think of anyone perfect. Well, Cassie is as close to perfect as it comes. Hold on, hold on. Let's see if I can get her to stay here. Here we go. This is as close to perfect as you're going to get right here. There she is. Cassie the dog. Yes, yes, Cassie. Let show everyone your dazzling smile. There we go. All right, now let's shut that camera off because there's really not much else in the house that needs to be looked at. I'm going to start by reading a little bit from Federalist One. It has been fairly remarked that it seems to have been reserved to the people of this country, and yeah, I know we're being a little jingoist here, by their conduct and example to decide the important question whether societies of men are really capable or not of establishing good government from reflection and choice, or whether they are forever destined to depend for their political constitutions on accident and force. That's from Federalist One. And that's the question we have before us today. Do we abide by this Constitution? Do we reflect and research and come up with a new Constitution? Or do we let tyrants, whether they have a D or an R by their name, is not relevant. Do we let tyrants just force us to do what they want us to do? In other words, maybe we only have a privilege of free speech. Maybe it's absolutely tolerable for Walmart to put arrows in the aisles to tell grown ass people where they should walk. Maybe it's right that governments come in with federal troops and clean up. And I know I'm being controversial there. Maybe it is. We'll see what we think. PvP. Actually, let's go to Lizzie. Cassie the Beautiful. PvP says, just don't do the dog treat thing in the Far Side cartoon. Resolution, the pools are just too committed. Yeah, you're right. The polls are too committed to libertarianism. And I'm not a perfect libertarian. I do think that there's principles of libertarianism that I do embrace, like free speech. And then there's other things that I feel like they take to extremes, like the tariffs thing. Don't get me wrong. In a perfect world, I would say fuck tariffs. But we don't live in a perfect world. We live in a world where other nations tariff the crap out of us. So what are we supposed to do with that? Anyway, libertarianism, according to Resolute Germ, simply doesn't work as well as they want it to. And Resolute Germ makes a cryptic, but sadly, I'm not going to unequivocally condemn this statement, because I think that there are times. Look into history, read the history of Cincinnatus. Just saying. Frankly, read the history of George Washington. Sometimes you need a tyrant. I would suggest that maybe look at our own times. And I would ask the question, is Donald Trump a tyrant? And I would ask the question, do we in fact need a tyrant right now? I'm not going to answer those questions for you. I haven't got the answers myself. I really don't. But in my quest to find those answers, going back to the Federalist Papers, man, there's so much good stuff in here, but I don't want to just make this a quote of Glenn Beck. So I'm going to ask 3 questions that I'm going to really try to follow along during this podcast. Why smaller government makes for better government. This is something where I do wholeheartedly agree with both Glenn Beck and the Ron Pauls. Where federal power ends and state power begins. This is a question that should be answerable by reading our Constitution, but evidently people aren't smart enough to do that. And how government should be organized and operated to maximize efficiency and minimize the risk of another monarchy. And that, I think, is where the Federalist Papers and some modern research is most likely to be helpful to us. Oh, PvP is making no bones about this one. Fuck tyrants. Carney has gone full dictator, and it's not good. And that's another question. Is Carney a dictator? Every Canadian I talk to says he is. And the research I've been able to do would concur with that. And in this case, hell to the no, it's not good that Carney is a dictator. I would suggest Canada does not need a dictator at the moment. It needs, well, something besides Carney. Don't be afraid of Art Carney. So with all those questions in mind, hopefully this isn't terribly boring to you, but I'm going to read the Federalist number 10. It's about two pages long. It's not terribly long, but long enough that modern audiences will be fidgeting. So I'll try to break it up a little bit. But who authored this? I should know, but I don't because my mind is a big pile of crap. Madison, James Madison wrote this one. So, among the numerous advantages promised by a well-constructed union, yes, what I've been wanting from a marriage all my life, none deserves to be more accurately developed than its tendency to break and control the violence of faction. So this is the eternal problem of every government, whether it's a tyranny, whether it's a democracy, whether it's a monarchy. People want to be the ones in charge. You know, I make a joke of it, but sincerely, maybe in an alternate universe, I'm like Tiberius Kirk in the alternate universe, you know, and maybe there's an evil Curtis somewhere with this machine that eliminates his enemies, and he's on his way to being an emperor. I may be in that fantasy for a bit. Anyway, footnote here, Douglas Adair showed chat. You know, guys, oh, forget it. I'm tired of even saying it. I'm unemployed. I'll work cheap. I probably would have edited that, but then who knows? Maybe I wouldn't. In preparing this essay, especially that part containing the analysis of faction and the theory of the extended republic, Madison creatively adapted the ideas of David Hume that politics may be reduced to a science. The forerunner of the Federalist number 10 may be found in Madison's Vices of the Political System. See also Madison's first speech of June the 6th, his first speech of June 26, 1787 at the Federal Convention, and his letter to Jefferson. Forever moving on up to the sky. The friend of popular governments never finds himself so much alarmed for their character and fate as when he contemplates their propensity to this dangerous vice. I think that Trump is a tyrant. I think that Biden's a tyrant. I think Obama's the bad guy. I think Reagan's the bad guy, which is only perhaps slightly worse than I think Reagan's the good guy. I think Trump's the good guy. I think Biden. I'm excited. I'm excited that Kamala is running for president. The friend of popular governments finds himself most alarmed when he contemplates their propensity to this dangerous vice. Aristotle and others' biggest argument against democracy, it's a valid one, was this very issue. It devolves all too often into a tyranny by the majority, and you end up with minorities. I'm going to use a very flagrant example. The whites were a very strong majority in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, and we used our majority power in very, very not kind and Christian ways against the blacks, against gays, against migrants. Although I think probably the order goes, anyway, it is what it is. And then you have the blacks and the gays and whoever else righteously rebelling against those wrongs, and your society falls apart. The friend of popular governments will not fail, therefore, to set a due value on any plan which, without violating the principles to which he is attached, provides a proper cure for it. The instability, injustice, and confusion introduced into the public councils have in truth been the mortal diseases under which popular governments have everywhere perished, as they continue to be the favorite and fruitful topics from which the adversaries to liberty derive their most specious declamations. The valuable improvements made by the American constitutions on the popular models, both ancient and modern, cannot certainly be too much admired, but it would be an unwarrantable partiality to contend that they have as effectually obviated the danger on this side as was wished and expected. Complaints are everywhere heard from our most considerate and virtuous citizens, equally the friends of public and private faith, and of public and personal liberty, that our governments are too unstable, California, that the public good is disregarded in the conflicts of rival parties, Democrat and Republican, and that measures are too often decided not according to the rules of justice and the rights of the minor party, as I would suggest happened when Trump was tried and declared. I won't use the word convicted because I want you to understand the difference. And declared a felon. Too often these these measures are determined by the superior force of an interested and overbearing majority. Once again, I cannot declare enough. It does not matter. It does not seem to matter if it's a D or or an R by the name. Too often, and it's just human nature. But we get to be in the majority, and we decide, well, your side did it, so we're going to do it. Only we're going to do it even worse. However anxiously we may wish that these complaints had no foundation, the evidence of known facts, and I've had that word thrown in my face all too often by people who don't really understand the definition of the word facts. It's a fact, this or that. It's a fact, this or that. And then you look into the facts and find out that no, it really wasn't. The evidence, though, of known facts will not permit us to deny that they are in some degree true. And if it was true in that time, I guarantee it was true now. It will be found indeed on a candid review of our situation that some of the distresses under which we labor have been erroneously charged on the operation of our governments. But it will be found at the same time that other causes will not alone account for many of our heaviest misfortunes, and particularly for that prevailing and increasing distrust of public engagements. Does that in any way sound familiar? I wonder who's on the Epstein list. I wonder what she meant by us having a privilege of free speech. I wonder what Trump means by sending the National Guard into all these places. That prevailing and increasing distrust of public engagements and alarm for private rights, which are echoed from one end of the continent to the other. These must be chiefly, if not wholly, effects of the unsteadiness and injustice with which a factious spirit has tainted. Ooh, the government's showing us its taint. This factious spirit has tainted our public administration. All right, let's look at the chat, see where we're at. PvP. Art Carney was funny. This one, not so much. And John Bonerero, Art Carney is in the Star Wars Holiday Special. PvP. Back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, minorities fighting to be treated equality had merit. Yes. The problem is when they stop being persecuted, they flip things on its head, demanding more rights than the majority. PvP, the way whites are demonized by some is misguided and at times serving an evil agenda. PvP, they hate whites and ignore the centuries when whites built civilization. And then, of course, and I'm just playing devil's advocate here. I actually am in agreement with you, PvP. So don't take it too personally. But you're going to hear some voices, and some of them rightfully so, saying, "Well, yeah, but blacks help build civilization too, and gays help build civilization too," and that's all true. It is, but I cannot bring myself to believe that us trying to make you, whether it's whites versus blacks, whites versus Native Americans, when we tried to make you ashamed of your culture, your people, your bloodline, we were absolutely wrong to do so. Turning around and doing the same thing, how do you have any right now to say that you're the better person? You don't have any. Nobody nobody should. This is one of the few things that I do take as an absolute. Well, maybe even this I don't take as an absolute, but in 9 times out of 10, 99 times out of 100, it is a shameful and horrible and evil thing to try to make someone ashamed of who they are. John Ponterero, Joy Reid said that whites never invented anything. It's true. That's a fact. Sorry, I couldn't resist. She did say that. PvP, remember though, many gays were white. Yeah, many gays were white, many were black, many were natives. I don't. I have no desire to make gays feel ashamed for being gay. Absolutely none. There's no point in it. Now, those who, whether white or straight or gay or whatever, try to groom children, that's a different story. But most of the gays I've talked to agree with me on that. So I feel pretty confident in saying if you're grooming kids, that's not a matter of culture. That's not a matter of your sexuality. That's deviancy. So I would say that someone doing that should be ashamed of himself. But if you want to go sleep with this person over here and they want to sleep with you, you know what? It's not my business. I'm not saying you absolutely have to be proud of it and throw it in everyone's face, but, you know, knock yourselves out. Just, leave me out of it unless you're both two hot females. Oh, no, I didn't say that. I didn't say that. Cassie, edit that out. Lizzie Armstrong, there are many voices we have to be mindful about generalizing. 100%. Yes, generalization, again, nine times out of 10, 99 times out of 100, generalization's usually not cool, but we all end up doing it. See, I just did it. Okay, back to Federalist 10. By a faction, I understand a number of citizens. So he actually defines his terms. Trust the science, but you're not going to, we're going to change the definitions to fit whatever we want it to be and then wonder why you don't trust it. By a faction, I understand a number of citizens, whether amounting to a majority or minority of the whole. So a number of citizens, so it's plural. So at least 2 people who are united and actuated by some common impulse of passion or of interest. After the discussion I just had, yeah, my mind is going down prurient lanes. But you know what? We'll be good people this time. Their interest is in making butter. Yes, there it is. Yes, making butter. Or of interest adverse to the rights of other citizens. Oh, adverse to the rights of other citizens. So, okay. So we're 2 people who aren't just united in a passion, but we want to somehow we want to stop other people from enjoying what they're doing. So I enjoy D&D. I want to make sure you can't enjoy Monopoly or whatever. Anyway, so number of citizens united by some common impulse of passion or interest, adverse to the rights of other citizens. We have a freedom of speech. You have a privilege of speech. Or to the permanent and aggregate interests of the community. I realize that the entirety of Canada could make a buttload of money by selling this oil, but I don't want you to do it, so you can't. Nah. There are 2 methods of curing the mischiefs of faction. The one by removing its causes. So let's say, for example, you don't like it that other people have the freedom of speech. One cure would be to enlighten you somehow, hopefully not by a re-education camp, as is suggested by some, but enlighten you that everybody should have the freedom of speech. The other by controlling its effects. So there are again two methods of removing the causes of faction. The one by destroying the liberty which is essential to its existence. You don't agree with us about vaccines, so we will destroy your liberty. The other, by giving to every citizen the same opinions, the same passions, and the same interests. I may be misunderstanding him, but you are totally allowed your freedom of speech as long as you say exactly the same things I do. Doesn't seem like a very profitable thing, nor does it sound very, very freedom-ish, does it? PvP, Lizzie, I don't try to generalize, but many left voices do exactly that. John Ponterero, re-education, as was done, and let's face it, it was done in a more or less non-mustache manian way. At least they didn't put him in a camp. But yes, they forced re-education on Jordan Peterson. Thank you, Canada. And Lizzie was not directing that at you personally, PvP. Speaking on behalf of some issues we all have as well. I'm with you on it, absolutely. On PvP, the pattern in Western countries is they are passing laws to take away freedom of speech. Indeed. Okay, so we can remove the causes of faction. We can control its methods. The two methods of removing the causes, destroying liberty. And then the other one is by making everyone, but giving to everyone. I have mixed feelings about that statement. On one hand, I don't know if he goes into this because I can't remember. I have read it, but I can't remember if he goes into this. To me, there's two things to be said. One is, do we force every citizen to have the same opinion? Or do we actually educate them? And do we all actually try to, what's the term? Basically, do we actually try to dive into the melting pot and become one people? Or is it forced on us? That's possibly a discussion for another day, but it could never be more truly said that the first remedy, destroying liberty, is worse than the disease. Liberty is to faction what air is to fire, an element without which it instantly expires. See, this is one of the reasons why we want to get rid of freedom of speech. If we can get rid of freedom of speech, then all that opposition, in theory, will die away. But it could not be a less folly to abolish liberty, which is essential to political life. Because it nourishes faction, then it would be to wish the annihilation of air, which is essential to animal life, because it imparts to fire its destructive agency. And this was to me one of the most brilliant arguments that he made. Now, granted, it's simply an analogy. I suppose if you want to try to poke holes in it, you can, but I think it's perfect. You want to get rid of freedom of speech because it causes faction, but you're killing the intellectual and political life of your fellow citizens. You're killing your fellow citizens. You're doing to them what Barnabas Collins is doing to Maggie. You're taking their life, not literally, but in every way that makes it worthwhile. Barnabas Collins, even though I love the character and definitely think he's cool, he's blatantly evil with what he's doing to Maggie because he doesn't really care about her. Not really. He just wants her to do and be what he thinks she should be. If he really loved her, he would let her go her own way. And the same with our fellow citizens. D's, R's, if you really loved each other, you would let each other have each other's thoughts, and you would debate those thoughts, and you would have fair and free elections. Instead, we have to control and manipulate and demonstrate what spirit we're really of. All right. The second expedient is as impracticable. Okay, so he does talk about it. As the first would be unwise. As long as the reason of man continues fallible, and he is at liberty to exercise it, different opinions will be formed. As long as the connection subsists between his reason and his self-love, his opinions and his passions will have a reciprocal influence on each other, and the former will be objects to which the latter will attach themselves. The diversity in the faculties of men from which the rights of property originate is not less an insuperable obstacle to a uniformity of interests. The protection of these faculties is the first object of government. From the protection of different and unequal faculties of acquiring property, the possession of different degrees and kinds of property immediately results. And from the influence of these on the sentiments and views of the respective proprietors ensues a division of the society into different interests and parties. So, communism wasn't in extent then, at least in the terms that it is now. But this is their argument here. Are we supposed to be? Well, they probably would have looked at it more as a monastic kind of society, or basically, is everything supposed to be in the hands? Is the means of production supposed to be in the hands of the government, or is it supposed to be in the hands of the people? And going to use the example of Trump. Different companies are making agreements with Trump where the government owns a fraction of the company. This is something where I beg to differ, not to an extent where I'm going to cut ties and say, "Well, Trump, I'm done with you." But I'm going to admit that to me, this is the closest that I've come to feeling that way. That is socialism. And fine, maybe we haven't established that socialism is wrong and bad, but this is the argument of the Federalist Papers. I have, within certain limits, the right to my property. If I want to take a hammer to this computer and break the crap out of it, I have the right to do that. If I want to go on here and do a YouTube channel with it, I have the right to do that. I would suggest that the guy who makes a YouTube channel is probably going to make it may not be much, but he's going to make maybe some tens or maybe even hundreds of dollars more than the other. Also, he's not going to have to pay money to replace his computer, at least not from himself destroying it. But the guy with the hammer has got that right. He's got the right to be a self-destructive idiot. Now, of course, I know that there's arguments there, and I do think there's limits there. If you're so self-destructive that society eventually is just taking care of you, you kind of lose your rights at some point. But I'm not wanting to get too. I'm not trying to put too fine of a point on things. I'm just trying to establish some things that hopefully we can agree on. Let's go back to the chat here. Soon we will only say we will only be able to say positive liberal speech. Yes, and Lizzie is agreeing with PvP on principle. PvP, no worries, Lizzie. I didn't take it personally. There you go. We're all adults here. We can talk about these things without getting too silly about things. Lizzie Armstrong, here we had the British Crown sack a voted in majority prime minister. Interesting. PvP, no freedom of speech. China, Maoist China, North Korea, Cambodia in the 70s, North Vietnam in the war years. Lizzie is sending love to PvP. PvP, I think it was either China in the revolution or Cambodia, the dictatorship, they wanted to murder their intelligentsia. I want to say it was both, but I could be wrong about that. I know the Chinese had their cultural revolution. I don't know. I don't mean to be pedantic here. I don't know that they murdered. I think they did, but I could be wrong. But they did take a bunch of their intelligentsia and put them in re-education camps, and I think a lot of them disappeared. So make of that whatever you want. This included folks wearing eyeglasses. Yes, because if you wore eyeglasses, you were part of the intelligentsia. And the funny thing is, we used the intelligentsia to establish our communist government. And now that we've established it, they are some of the first against the wall. John Ponterero, a piece of the action. PvP is saying socialism is bad. And again, I don't want to generalize, but I would, again, it's kind of my rule of thumb. I would say that outside of a voluntary monastic existence, 99 times out of 100, I would say in every major history lesson we can take, socialism tends to be bad. Lizzie Armstrong, here we have folk we allowed in, now inciting irrational violence and saying they represent us all. That's happened. Yeah, that's, and not, I hope this comes out the right way. I mean it in a respectful and, shall we say, inclusive way, toward you anyway, Lizzie. Yeah, that's happening everywhere, and it's been terrible. And I would suggest it's one of the reasons why Trump got elected. Whether you like him or not, he might not have been elected if we were managing our what do you call it? I'm having a senior moment. Our immigration correctly. Anyway, that's another topic for another day. PvP, NDP reduced to 6 seats in the election, saying outgoing leader says no more than 50% SIS males are allowed to enter the leadership race. Interesting. All right, back to the Federalist Papers. The latent causes of faction, latent, are thus sown in the nature of man. So unless we're going to change the nature of man, there's always going to be some degree of faction. We have to build a government that takes that into account and minimizes while still allowing liberty, that minimizes the causes and the damages of faction. We see them everywhere, brought into different degrees of activity according to the different circumstances of civil society. A zeal for different opinions concerning religion. I believe in Christ. I believe in Muhammad. Concerning government, I believe that we should have stronger, we should have more people included in the franchise. I believe that we should have fewer people included in the franchise. Many other points, as well of speculation as of practice. An attachment to different leaders ambitiously contending for preeminence and power. I like Rand Paul. I like Donald Trump. I like, I can't remember her name. I like Kamala Harris. That's not who I was thinking of, but I can remember the name. We all have our political heroes, whether that's good or bad. An attachment to different leaders ambitiously contending for preeminence and power, or to persons of other descriptions whose fortunes have been interesting to the human passions. I like the Kardashians. I like Kanye. I like the Gaithers. I like Elvis Presley. Or to persons of other descriptions. Anyway, these have in turn divided mankind into parties. Hey, let's have a party. Inflamed them with mutual animosity. This is where the trouble begins, really. I think it's more or less okay to have different parties, but when we start fighting, when we stop debating in an interest of let's find the truth, let's find what's good for all of us, that's where it all goes to crap. Rendered them much more disposed to vex and oppress each other than to cooperate for their common good. A friend of mine recently reposted something on Facebook. I almost went on and tried to eviscerate it, but I decided that either they would not hear it, or if they did, they would just take offense. So I'm not going to name any names, but the Facebook post started with, "I'm not going to be distracted by debate. I'm not willing to cooperate with tyranny," and blah, 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 and all this. Well, first of all, we have to decide, are we under a tyranny? And second of all, whether we're under a tyranny or not, when the French were revolting against the Yazidis, there was a lot of division. There were people who thought that they should be communists. There were people who thought they should be capitalists. There were people who thought that they should not only cling to but increase their colonies. There were people that thought that colonialism was terrible and that all of the colonies should be allowed to be free countries. There was a lot of division. They had to come together and cooperate for their common good to overthrow the Yazidis. So if it is true, my friend who will be unnamed, that we're under a tyranny, maybe instead of throwing a bunch of anger and hate and vitriol at someone like me, maybe you should instead be showing a loving and kind disposition and saying, look, I understand why you voted for Trump, but Trump really is a big dodo head. I'll listen to that. I am done listening to hate and vitriol. I'm just saying. So strong is this propensity of mankind to fall into mutual animosities, as I just demonstrated, that where no substantial occasion presents itself, a Facebook post, the most frivolous and fanciful distinctions have been sufficient to kindle their unfriendly passions and excite their most violent conflicts. Now, fortunately, both of us are too old and lazy to get into a violent conflict, but there it is. The most common and durable source of factions has been the various and unequal distribution of property. That's why the debate between that's why the economic debate is so important and why it gets so contentious. Those who hold and those who are without property have ever formed distinct interests in society. Those who are creditors, those who are debtors, fall under a like discrimination. A landed interest, a manufacturing interest, a mercantile interest, a moneyed interest, with many lesser interests, grow up of necessity in civilized nations and divide them into different classes, actuated by different sentiments and views. The regulation of these various and interfering interests forms the principal task of modern legislation and involves the spirit of party and faction in the necessary and ordinary operations of government. Elon Musk is bad. Jeff Bezos is bad. Those poor people on welfare are bad. Well, maybe they are, or maybe they just have different interests. And if we're going to make this government work, we have to find ways of maximizing their ability to promote their own interests. Lizzie Armstrong, a small group only but loud and violent, creates distraction from the folk who need help. Very true. And PvP, Muhammad, no, look at him, bad dude. And you know what? I hope this is okay to say. I tend to be in agreement with you. The only caveat I would throw in there is the Sufi poets, but that's not. I know a Muslim would howl at me to say this. As an outsider looking in, it appears to me that the Sufi poets are inspired by something besides Muhammad. Please forgive me, God, if I am wrong, but I love Sufi poetry, but to me, I don't think they're inspired by Muhammad. I think it's like C.S. Lewis at the end of The Last Battle. The colorman, who is basically that world's version of the Arabs, he had worshipped Tash. They had Aslan and Tash. He'd worshipped Tash all of his life, and he'd been a good and honorable and honest man, and had devoted that goodness and honesty to Tash. And then at the end of his life, he found that it really wasn't Tash he had been worshiping all along. It had been Aslan. I know this probably puts me on the verge of heresy, but anyway, I won't dive too deeply into that. I think when you're worshiping that which is good and honest and honorable, you may have the wrong name, but in the end, you are worshiping the right God. You just need to learn more about that God. And that doesn't necessarily mean anything. I haven't prayed this prayer in a long time, but I used to pray every day that God would dash my illusions of Him every day and let me see Him a little more clearly. I quit doing that because it got a little painful to have all those illusions dashed. But anyway, John Ponterera likes Ike. Yes, Trump is flawed, but next to Israel, he is defending Western democracy. And I know there's a lot of debate about Israel. I know there is. All other Western governments have fallen into pro-terrorist BS. According to PvP here, PvP says, I heard Roger Waters' fifth wife is divorcing him since he hates Israel. He should marry Greta. Well, I won't compete with him for her. Just saying. PvP, we are all an offshoot. There are offshoots of Islam. Yes, that's all I'm trying to say. I don't want us to paint with too broad of a brush. I mean, your opinion's your opinion. I don't have the right to put words in your mouth, but when it comes to me, I want to believe, maybe I'm wrong, but I want to believe that the average Muslim really is a good and honest person. I'm not even going to comment about the Quran or about Muhammad. I'm just talking about that person. And I think it's a minority of people who are making, and I think that one of the big solutions is going to have to be when the Muslim community is like, this is making us look bad. This crap needs to stop. We need to stop this crap. I think that will go a long, long way toward finding a solution for everybody. When the Palestinians are like, yeah, Israel's doing some bad crap, but Hamas is just terrible. We need to stop Hamas. I think that will go a long way to finding a good solution for both the Palestinian and the Israeli. Maybe I'm wrong. Likely I'm wrong. Lizzie Armstrong, years ago, I wrote about a very sad revolution which began in Iberia and moved across to Sierra Leone. Interesting. Anyway, I would say we need to trade stuff, but one, I need to get my stuff written, and two, your stuff is probably better than mine. So, and hello, Snortopupus Cuber, our favorite polar bear, is in the house. I hope that bears can enjoy pointless talks about the Federalist Papers. Snortopupus. I'll take Constitutional Republic for 200, Alex. Very good. Love you, Snortopupus. PvP, actually, Curtis saw a vid that reviewed Muslims and a lot wanted to kill the West. I know. It is very possible I'm wrong. Sometimes I look at those videos of people saying death to America, celebrating the fall of the Twin Towers, and I think maybe I am wrong. Maybe it is the majority. And I don't know what to do with that, because if that's the case, then it makes it very difficult to think that there could be a solution. But Federalist Papers. This is a principle that I think both the R's and the D's have forgotten. I'm about to read about. No man is allowed to be a judge in his own cause. You guys probably do, but it is very frustrating when I'm talking with someone of a particular ideology And, this government entity audited itself, and guess what? We found that there was no corruption. We found that there was no ideological bias. And I just want to be like JD Vance. Do you hear yourself talking? This entity audited itself and found that there was no corruption. I'm going to tell you, I hope I'm a moderately honest man, but if I'm the one doing the auditing of my own stuff, I'm going to paint it as good as I reasonably can. That $20 that I spent for pictures of hot babes back in this time, that was just research. That wasn't me being a pervert. Not at all. Of course, it's been a long, long time since I did anything like that, but nevertheless, a man cannot be a judge in his own cause because his interest would certainly bias his judgment and not improbably corrupt his integrity. This is the problem that I find both with Trump and with those who try to condemn him. Trump can't be his own judge because he's gonna side with himself because he's human. And the jackasses that were trying to convict him, look, have we all forgotten all the 50s and 60s shows we saw about police work and about the Wild West? We were supposed to be evolved past this point of, I just want to take that person down and I'm going to do it no matter what. We were supposed to be evolved to this point of, this is what justice is. This person did this unjust thing. A jury of his peers found this person guilty. This is the penalty prescribed by law based off of our Republican principles. This law was passed by our legislator, and he will be punished based off of this. That was supposed to mean, that no one's above the law. That's what that was supposed to mean. That's not the way it was done. Instead, we got people who were prejudiced against him, who were stated, and that's a fact, who had stated on media that they would do whatever it took to take Trump down, and therefore were demonstrably not neutral. It's what a judge is supposed to be, whether you like Trump or not. That's not the point. The point is, the judge is supposed to be neutral. They were not neutral. Well, we don't care. Well, then why am I supposed to care if it happens to you? Why am I supposed to care when an unneutral judge decides that, he likes your house and therefore he's going to have this corporation that he owns, but he's not going to tell anybody that he owns it. He's going to sue you for that house and take it. Why am I supposed to have pity and sympathy for you? Well, because you're my friend and you like me. The law is supposed to apply the same to all of us. With equal, nay, with greater reason, a body of men are unfit to be both judges and parties at the same time. This is the other problem I have with all these activist judges. Please let that sink in. It is a foundational principle of our nation. Nobody is fit to be both judge and party at the same time. And yeah, there's activist judges on the right too. It's as bad as a principle there. Yet what are many of the most important acts of legislation? but so many judicial determinations, not indeed concerning the rights of single persons, but concerning the rights of large bodies of citizens. And what are the different classes of legislators? But advocates and parties to the causes which they determine. Is a law proposed concerning private debts? As an example, when Biden forgave all the student loan debts, I'm not talking about whether that was right or wrong. It's a law proposed concerning students' private debts. It's a question to which the creditors, in this case, the federal government, each of us, taxpayers, creditors are parties on one side, and the debtors, the students who took the loans, are on the other. Justice ought to hold the balance between them. Yet the parties are and must be themselves the judges. And the most numerous party, or in other words, the most powerful faction, must be expected to prevail. Shall domestic manufactures be encouraged? And in what degree? By restrictions on foreign manufacturers. I mean, the question's right here. Are tariffs basically good or not? Are questions which would be differently decided by the landed and the manufacturing classes, and probably by neither, with a sole regard to justice and the public good. Basically, all too often, we're not deciding whether tariffs are generally good or bad. We're deciding, are they good for us? Are they good for my business? Are they good for my party? The apportionment of taxes on the various descriptions of property is an act which seems to require the most exact impartiality. Yet, there is perhaps no legislative act in which greater opportunity of temptation are given to a predominant party to trample on the rules of justice. The Republicans won this round, so let's dig in. And this is totally, God, please, I hope this is hypothetical. Since we won, let's get all those Democrats listed, and we're going to increase their taxes by 5 or 10%. I hope all of you are having your flesh crawl at that statement, but that's what the natural man will do. Every shilling with which they overburden the inferior number is a shilling saved to their own pockets. Let's see what's going on in the chat. PvP saying, look at the United Kingdom. Lizzie Armstrong, sorry, that was Liberia and Sierra Leone. AI corrects my writing through guessing. Oops. Right on, right on. Lizzie, we will get to Exchange. My computer's still down. Hard to get stuff done, including editing my video material for YouTube. Right on. PC needs a zapping or very smart techie. One of these days, I need to introduce you to LDG of Free the Net. He's rough around the edges, but he's actually a very good person at heart, and he's an incredible tech. But anyway, okay. It is in vain to say that enlightened statesmen will be able to adjust these clashing interests. Trump is enlightened. He'll be able to balance all of this. Kamala Harris was enlightened. Biden, Bush. These are enlightened people. They can balance all of these interests and render them all subservient to the public good. Enlightened statesmen will not always be at the helm. Let's even assume that it's true there have been some enlightened statesmen. Maybe you think Washington, maybe you think Jefferson. I personally think James Monroe. They're not the ones in charge. They're dead. Nor in many cases can such an adjustment be made at all without taking into view indirect and remote considerations, which will rarely prevail over the immediate interest which one party may find in disregarding the rights of another for the good of the whole. We talk a lot about the butterfly effect. You pass a law, and there's always unintended consequences, or nearly always. So you pass a law, and I don't have an example in my head right now, but let's say you pass a tax that you think is totally harmless, doesn't hurt anyone, and the money is budgeted to something that you absolutely think is a good positive thing. Say it's going to research the cure for cancer or something. And I'm totally making something up here, but there will be some unintended consequence, like some of that money will end up in the hands of the mafia, or will come from the mafia, or it will come from the drug trade, or somehow will enhance the drug trade. Partly because we are flawed, mainly because we are flawed, even our best intentions all too often end up supporting something that's very wicked and evil. This whole Epstein list, I do not doubt that whoever got that whole ball rolling, well, people are going to sleep with underage teenagers anyway, so we might as well direct that toward the good of the government and cause people to vote the right way and protect democracy and protect the institutions of democracy. It's a shame what's going to happen to those girls, but it would have happened anyway. And at least with Epstein, maybe it won't be so bad. I guarantee you that's what was going on in the minds. And I also guarantee that probably 4 out of 5 of those asshats were thinking, oh, and by the way, I probably will get 1 or 2 of those underage girls myself. I doubt that more than 1 in 5 of them was enough of a saint to say, at least I'm not diddling the teenage girls. I'm such a good person. The inference to which we are brought is that the causes of faction cannot be removed, and that relief is only to be sought in the means of controlling its effects. So we can't take away. I mean, it's unequivocal. We cannot, according to Madison, take away the freedom of speech. We have to somehow control the effects. Let that sink in. Right here, we're not supposed to have dumbass laws about hate speech. We're supposed to be mature, educated adults so that we can look at hate speech and go, this is dumb. I'm not going to listen to this. And okay, yeah, there'll be 5 or 6 or 10 or 20 people who will. But hopefully there's enough grown-ups in the room that we can do something about those 20. Well, yeah, but they have guns and stuff. Well, okay, fine. That's a discussion for another day. Having said that, if 100 grown-ups are in the room with guns, well, do the math. It's when the grown-ups don't have anything to defend themselves with that the problem arises, I would suggest. If a faction consists of less than a majority, relief is supplied by the Republican principle, which enables the majority to defeat its sinister views by regular vote. This is the difference. This paragraph is going to explain the difference, or hopefully will explain the difference to you. What is the difference between a republican government and a pure democracy? It may clog the administration, it may convulse the society, but a majority will be unable to execute and mask its violence under the forms of the Constitution. What I mean is a faction that's less than the majority. The majority, the minorities, violence will not work. The majority is too powerful. When a majority is included in a faction, the form of popular government, on the other hand, enables it to sacrifice to its ruling passion or interest both the public good and the rights of other citizens. This is the problem with pure democracy. To secure the public good and private rights against the danger of such a faction, and at the same time to preserve the spirit and the form of popular government, is then the great object to which our inquiries are directed. Basically, how does a Republican government work? Let me add that it is the great desideratum by which alone this form of government can be rescued from the opprobrium under which it has so long labored, and be recommended to the esteem and adoption of mankind. He's about to lay bare the secret. Snortopupus Cuber, both Anwar Sadat and Menachem Begum, were classified as terrorists when they were young. This is true, as my friends would say. This is a fact, but it is, and I'm not making fun of you, Snort. Both became heads of state later and received Nobel Peace Prizes. The world is weird. This is dangerously close to being the statement of the stream right here, because it is factual and it is true. They were both classified as terrorists by different organizations, yet they both became heads of state and received Nobel Peace Prizes. I'm not sure what that's supposed to be. PvP, look at sin? I'm not sure what that means. The sun is up here. It's 6 a.m. Sunday morning. Nice. PvP, look at Sharia law. It makes Epstein look like a picnic. And John Ponterero, morning has broken like the first morning. DJ Ronnie G, another wonderful creator joining us right now. Hello and greetings at Snortopupus Cuber and John Ponterero. Please check out DJ Ronnie G. He's got a lot of sci-fi stuff and a lot of informative stuff. So you will learn a lot by going and checking out his channel. Lizzie Armstrong, that was the third song I learned to play on the piano. I wish I'd learned to play the piano. I broke my hands, but I keep them flexible, so maybe I could still play, but I never bother to try. I need to do a lot of stuff. A lot of stuff Curtis needs to do, but at the moment I'm reading the Federalist Papers to you guys because that's entertaining. People don't like to think. That's why I read the Federalist Papers, to get an audience. By what means is this object attainable? In other words, how do you keep the majority from becoming a tyranny? How do you do that? Evidently by one of two only. So there's two means to accomplish that. Either the existence of the same passion or interest in a majority at the same time must be prevented. So the majority has to become a bunch of mind-numbed robots working for the World Economic Forum and doing its bidding, or The majority, having such coexistent passion or interest, must be rendered by their number and local situation unable to concert and carry into effect schemes of oppression. Delicate dance there. Do you even think that's possible? I've often wondered. If the impulse and the opportunity be suffered to coincide, we well know that neither moral nor religious motives can be relied on as adequate control. They are not found to be such on the injustice and violence of individuals, and lose their efficacy in proportion to the number combined together. That is, in proportion as their efficacy becomes needful. There's a footnote here. In Vices of the Political System, Madison listed 3 motives, each of which he believed was insufficient to prevent individuals or factions from oppressing each other. 1, a prudent regard to their own good, as involved in the general and permanent good of the community. In other words, I'm not going to be violent against you because it will fall back on me. 2, respect for character. I may disagree with you, but I respect you too much. I'm not going to get violent. 3, religious. I disagree with you, but my Bible says to do unto you as I would have done unto me. As to respect for character, Madison remarked that in a multitude, its efficacy is diminished in proportion to the number, which is to share the praise or the blame. Basically, I might respect this one individual, but I don't respect this race or this party. So I'm happy to do violence to them anyway. And if that guy happens to be hurt, well, I'm sorry, but that's just the breaks. For this observation, Madison again drew upon David Hume. Adair suggests that Madison deliberately omitted his list of motives from the Federalist. Quote, there was a certain disadvantage in making derogatory remarks to a majority that must be persuaded to adopt your arguments. This is one of the problems that I have had with the debate about vaccines. I don't know who the majority really is, but large bodies of people that I would suggest were at least 40% on each side were lobbing insults at each other and then not understanding why the other side wouldn't change their opinion. In Curtis language, this is called very stupid and illogical. But I guess in modern parlance, this is just political discourse. Let's insult each other and then be upset that the other side didn't change its mind. Okay, back to the Federalist Papers. From this view of the subject, it may be concluded that a pure democracy, there's that word, by which I mean a society consisting of a small number of citizens who assemble and administer the government in person, can admit of no cure for the mischiefs of faction. This is why we chose not to be a pure democracy. One, at that time and with the technology they had, they couldn't be. There was no way they could get 7 million people to vote on every law. I wonder if we could do it. We probably could, but with the internet, but back then it would have been impossible. But number 2, if they did somehow get all the 7 million citizens to come together right now over me, if they'd got them to come together, it would have just evolved exactly into what he's describing. You would have had 4 million white. Well, honestly, they didn't hold blacks to be citizens, but nevertheless, you'd have had 4 million people of this faction basically tyrannizing over 3 million. You would have had 4 million deciding that 3 million were going to pay all the taxes and the 4 million were going to get all the benefits. And it would have lasted maybe a year or two and then would have devolved into another revolution, another civil war, and it just would have been a horrible, ugly mess. A common passion or interest will, in almost every case, be felt by a majority of the whole. A communication and concert results from the form of government itself. And there's nothing to check the inducements to sacrifice the weaker party or an obnoxious individual. Again, going back to this was my problem with how the Democrats dealt with Trump. Fine, you hold him to be an obnoxious individual, but where was the justice? Well, it's just because we say so. That's not justice. That's not justice. That's not Republican government. We built this government to protect us. Because who knows when I'm going to be the obnoxious individual? Who knows when I'm going to say the dumbass crap that's going to upset you? And then I want justice on my side. I want to be protected from you using arbitrary laws to destroy me. Hence it is that such democracies have ever been spectacles of turbulence and contention. You don't believe it? Go look at your history. Have ever been found incompatible with personal security or the rights of property, and have in general been as short in their lives as they have been violent in their deaths. Theoretic politicians who have patronized this species of government have erroneously supposed that by reducing mankind to a perfect equality in their political rights, they would at the same time be perfectly equalized and assimilated in their possessions, their opinions, and their passions. Let's see what's going on in the chat. People saying hello to each other. Lizzie Armstrong, thank you for reading the Federalist Papers, Curtis. I have a copy of them here, but nice to have a discussion. Great folks here. Yeah, I love the community we have here. Let's see, PvP is sharing a link. You know, while I'm at it, I'm going to remind you guys 4 more super chats, and we will do a watch party soon. And we have finally gotten an adjustment in what kind of, no, we don't. Yes, we do. We have Republican government tied with rule by tired bloggers. 42% of you each, respectively, think that Republican government or rule by tired bloggers is the best form of government. 17% of you are for pure democracy, and nobody agrees with Aristotle that aristocracy is the best. So, getting back to, if I can find, where are you at? Stream Elements, Lizzie Armstrong. I don't know if I can find your thing here, PvP. I know it's here. Yes, no, yes. The great thing is we have some wonderful chat. The bad part is I'm slow at finding stuff. Oh, I can't find it. Well, anyway, PvP is sharing a link. Hopefully some of you can take a moment. Oh, here it is. Here it is. I at least want to take a look at what it is. Canada's public safety minister's phone number found on a document seized during a 2006 terror probe, which, there you go. People can be labeled terrorists, and sometimes they are, sometimes they're not. Lizzie likes the posters of Curtis sitting with the founding fathers. And let me warn you, the posters make me look better than I really do. So PvP think it was automatic, but you're welcome. Right on. And we got that. Okay, so back to the Federalist Papers. I think we're about 2/3 or 3/4 of the way through. I'll cut back on my commentary here. A republic. Here we go. We're finally at the solution. They didn't just posit the problems like your tired blogger does. They proposed solutions. Their solution was a republic, by which Madison meant a government in which the scheme of representation takes place, opens a different prospect, and promises the cure for which we are seeking. So it's not really a definition. It's basically just what the republic is supposed to accomplish. Let us examine the points in which it varies from pure democracy, and we shall comprehend both the nature of the cure and the efficacy which it must derive from the union. The two great points of difference between a democracy and a republic are, first, the delegation of the government in the latter to a small number of citizens elected by the rest. So it's not all 300 million of us making all the laws. We elect a Congress and a Senate to pass the laws. We elect a president to execute the laws, and so on. Secondly, the greater number of citizens and greater sphere of country over which the latter may be extended. And I do wonder sometimes. This is a discussion for another day, but I do sometimes wonder: have we become too big, or have we hit the limit at which a republic even can work efficaciously? The effect of the first difference is, on the one hand, to refine and enlarge the public views by passing them through the medium of a chosen body of citizens whose wisdom, we were supposed to send our wisest out there. What happened? May best discern the true interest of their country, and whose patriotism and love of justice will be least likely to sacrifice it to temporary or partial considerations. Under such a regulation, it may well happen that the public voice pronounced by the representatives of the people will be more consonant to the public good than if pronounced by the people themselves, convened for the purpose. What do you think about that? Is that true, or is that wrong? On the other hand, the effect may be inverted. Men of factious tempers, of local prejudices, or of sinister designs may, by intrigue, by corruption, or by other means, first obtain the suffrages and then betray the interests of the people. I would suggest that's what we are seeing now. The question resulting is whether small or extensive republics are most favorable to the election of proper guardians of the public weal, and it is clearly decided in favor of the latter by two obvious considerations. It's going to make the argument whereby at least he is convinced that a republic is better than a pure democracy. In the first place, it is to be remarked that however small the republic may be, the representatives must be raised to a certain number in order to guard against the cabals of a few, and that however large it may be, they must be limited to a certain number in order to guard against the confusion of a multitude. Hence, the number of representatives in the two cases not being in proportion to that of the constituents, and being proportionally greatest in the small republic, it follows that if the proportion of fit characters be not less in the large than in the small republic, the former will present a greater option and consequently a greater profitability of a fit choice. Now, that's the first time that I find his wording somewhat difficult. Okay, so let's take the example of small republic. There has to be, let's say that Tonkawa declares its independence and the 3,000 people out here are their own country. I would suggest that the 5-person city council is no longer at that point enough. We would need a substantially larger body of people, or all you'll have is the 5 richest people making all the decisions. Does that make sense? Otherwise, we would be basically just ruled by a cabal of the few. Now, let's assume that Canada, Russia, China, and the United States and Mongolia decide we're going to be one big happy family, one big Republican government, right? Well, how the heck, what number would be adequate? Would 500 still be enough? Well, maybe we need more because we have more people, but at some point, all you have is a mob again. I don't know where that number is. I don't know if that's at 1,000. I don't know if it's at 10,000. But it's when you have a great big country, and again, I sometimes wonder if this is our problem. You still have to have a small enough number of people to actually make the laws. And I don't know, I can't prove this, but I've often suspected this may be part of the problem of the United States as it currently stands. We have so many people in the legislature. It's so damn difficult even to get a simple budget passed through. At the end of the day, it's just easier for these dumbasses to say, you know what, let's just slough that off either on the president or on the bureaucracy. Let them make the laws. We're going to spend all of our time getting reelected, getting perks and money from the lobbyists, and diddling teenage girls on Epstein Island. I don't know. I'm just speculating, but that's basically what he's saying. You've got to get that number as close to correct as you can. But it's obvious that it can be too small, it can be too large. There can be too few people making all the decisions, there can be too many. And then you end up with nobody making a decision. Hopefully, hopefully I'm explaining that right, but that's the way I take that paragraph. That the power of Republican government is figuring out how many is too few, how many is too many. Let's split that difference and try to get it right and get the right number of people so that there is representation, but things are still getting done. Let's look at the chat. Hopefully I haven't bored all of you to tears with that. Indeed, in Firefly, they speak English and Chinese, correct? They were the only 2 cultures left that had taken over the Earth at that time. Right on. In the next place, back to the Federalist Papers, as each representative will be chosen by a greater number of citizens in the large than in the small republic. And this was the whole argument behind why Washington, D.C. should be a state. That a person in California, their vote is worth less than a person's in Oklahoma. What you don't understand is that was the whole point. It's the whole point of our Constitution. That is the way the Founding Fathers felt it should be. If you're in a large state, then per force, per design, your vote will count less than someone who is in a small state. Otherwise, that small state becomes burdened by what has been, by a tyranny of the majority. That was the protection. It's inlaid there. So when people argue that that's not just, possibly they're right, but they're arguing against the very foundations of our Constitution. As each representative will be chosen by a greater number of citizens in the large than in a small republic, it will be more difficult for unworthy candidates to practice with success the vicious arts by which elections are too often carried. And the suffrages of the people, being more free, will be more likely to center on men who possess the most attractive merit and the most diffusive and established characters. So here's part of the balance. Here in Oklahoma, we have more of a good old boy system, and it's easier to bribe small towns. We're going to buy you guys a potluck lunch if you'll vote for me. Well, I doubt if even a billionaire could afford to do that very often in LA, where there's millions and millions of people. Now, a government may not be able to bribe millions and millions of people. That's where the hole ends up happening. And that's why I think it's funny that the very same person that will say, well, we don't want billionaires ruling us, and to which I agree. We don't. But they're absolutely fine with a government that has profoundly more resources than any billionaires ever had. They're fine with that government buying their vote. Well, they're not buying our vote. Yeah, they are. Whether it's a D or an R, they buy your vote with benefits. Not to say we should do away with all benefits. Please think about it when you vote. Maybe the motives behind these benefits aren't as pure as you think they are. It must be confessed that in this, as in most other cases, there is a mean on both sides of which inconveniences will be found to lie. And we discussed that earlier. 5 people is not enough to rule even Tonkawa in, you know, in the context of what we're discussing. It's probably fine for a city government. It would be terrible if it was a national government. By enlarging too much the number of electors, and now we're even going further, by having too many people have the franchise itself, too many people being able to vote, you render the representative too little acquainted with all their local circumstances and lesser interests, as by reducing it too much, you render him unduly attached to these and too little fit to comprehend and pursue great and national objects. The federal constitution forms a happy combination in this respect, the great and aggregate interests being referred to the national, the local, in particular to the state legislatures. So we have the division, as a republic, we also have the divisions of the governments. Tonkawa takes care of Tonkawa. Oklahoma takes care of Oklahoma. The United States takes care of the United States. A little simplistic, maybe, but that was the idea. Essentially, cities won't allow states to tyrannize over them. States won't allow the federal government to tyrannize over them. And the federal government, in theory, is looking after the interests of everybody, in theory. We all know how theory comes out. We're on the last page, so let's check out the chat. Charlotte just began a stream, was not expected. Right on. Here, most votes are in Ontario and Quebec. They have a large population. Is that why they suck all the resources from the West? Is basically, you guys are making the point. The majority taxes the minority and just drags all the benefits to themselves. This is why Western separation is growing. Lizzie Armstrong, I guess there are varying high end corporate and political economic relationships not clearly visible to ethical due process at the end of the day. It's a consideration. It is. No, it totally is. And it's a hard question, and I probably shouldn't segue into so many questions. I'll finish this last page, and then we will call it a stream, so y'all can go to Charlotte or do whatever you need to do. The other point of difference is the greater number of citizens and extent of territory which may be brought within the compass of Republican than of Democratic government. It is this circumstance principally which renders factious combinations less to be dreaded in the former than in the latter. The smaller the society, the fewer probably will be the distinct parties and interests composing it. Which makes sense. There's still blacks and gays and Native Americans and this and that in Tonkawa, but there's probably I don't believe there are any billionaires. There's not that many millionaires. There's probably not that many Muslims. There's probably maybe some, but I doubt that there's many. And on and on and on. There's a lot fewer factions in Tonkawa. There can't be more than 1,000 or 2,000 factions if you have factions of 2 people. There can't hardly be more than that in this small town. The fewer the distinct parties and interests, the more frequently will a majority be found of the same party. And the smaller the number of individuals composing majority, and the smaller the compass within which they are placed, the more easily will they concert and execute their plans of oppression. That's one of the reasons why you hear so many oppressive stories from small towns. There's a lot of good things about small towns, but it's also a lot easier to get 1,000 or 2,000 angry, whatever, and have them oppress the other 1,000 or so than it is to get several million to oppress another several million. Extend the sphere, you take in a greater variety of parties and interests. You make it less probable that a majority of the whole will have a common motive to invade the rights of other citizens. I think this is one of the reasons why the Democrat Party has had its sufferings. They're basically a big bunch of special interest groups, and each special interest group has actually got its own interests. And finally, I think each special interest group got tired of saying, well, the Democrat Party is what makes the decision. We're kind of tired of being told what to do and who to vote for and how to think and being canceled if we don't think the right way. Extend the sphere. You take in a greater variety of parties and interests. You make it less probable that a majority of the whole will have a common motive to invade the rights of other citizens. If such a common motive exists, it will be more difficult for all who feel it to discover their own strength and to act in unison with each other. Besides other impediments, it may be remarked that where there is a consciousness of unjust or dishonorable purposes, communication is always checked by distrust. I don't know if anyone else has felt it, but I've felt quite a lot of distrust lately because everybody's got their political agenda. Everyone's got their political idea. And it's so easy to misspeak because we've gotten to where we're part of parties that are so big and so monolithic. And it has agendas that, frankly, we're nothing but little bitty ants. Communication is checked by distrust in proportion to the number whose concurrence is necessary. It's both a good and a bad thing. It's good in that it It breaks up monopolies. We'll put it that way. Hence, it clearly appears that the same advantage which a republic has over a democracy in controlling the effects of faction is enjoyed by a large over a small republic, is enjoyed by the union over the states composing it. And here, this is his argument for instead of just scattering off to the winds, we should keep the union. It will be easier if we're divided. If we are 2 or 3 nations, if we're divided into 30 or 50 or 60 nations, it'll be easier for each one of those little nations to be conquered by some kind of a tyranny. Does this advantage consist in the substitution of representatives whose enlightened views, which we don't often have anymore, and virtuous sentiments render them superior to local prejudices and to schemes of injustice? It will not be denied that the representation of the Union will be most likely to possess these requisite endowments. Does it consist in the greater security afforded by the greater variety of parties against the event of any one party being able to outnumber and oppress the rest? In an equal degree, does the increased variety of parties comprised within the Union increase this security? Does it, in fine, consist in the greater obstacles opposed to the concert and accomplishment of the secret wishes of an unjust and interested majority? Here again, the extent of the Union gives it the most palpable advantage. The influence of factious leaders may kindle a flame within their particular states, but will be unable to spread a general conflagration throughout the other states. We find this, I would suggest, both with the Republican and Democratic parties. You have the red states, you have the blue states. We need them. We need the both, because otherwise the red will be a tyranny or the blue. Oh, my side would never do that. Yeah. Oh, yeah, it would. Yes, it would. The influence of factious leaders may kindle a flame within their particular states, but will be unable to spread a general conflagration through the other states. A religious sect may degenerate into a political faction in a part of the Confederacy, but the variety of sects dispersed over the entire face of it must secure the national councils against any danger from that source. A rage for paper money, for an abolition of debts, for an equal division of property, for any other improper or wicked project. Now, this is Madison talking, but he is saying abolition of debts, equal division of property is a improper and wicked project. His words, not mine. Make of that what you will be less apt to pervade the whole body of the Union than a particular member of it, and the same proportion as such a malady is more likely to taint a particular county or district than an entire state. There again, the government showing its taint. Footnote here, the negative on state laws, which Madison had unsuccessfully advocated the Federal Convention, was designed to prevent the enactment of improper or wicked measures by the states. The Constitution did include specific prohibitions on the state legislatures, but Madison dismissed these as short of the mark. He also doubted that the judicial system would effectively keep the states within their proper limits. I would suggest that he has been proven right. In the extent and proper structure of the Union, therefore, and when it comes to the judiciary, in the extent and proper structure of the Union, therefore, we behold a Republican remedy for the diseases most incident to Republican government. And according to the degree of pleasure and pride we feel in being Republicans, ought to be our zeal in cherishing the spirit and supporting the character of Federalists. That's Federalist number 10. Let's finish up with the chat and then we'll call it a stream. The equalization payments go from Western Canada to the East. We provide the economy and get crumbs. And he's got to go. All right. PvP, have a lovely weekend. Thank you for being here. And Burr, all the best to you and yours. Well, I'm not going to claim that this article alone proves the Republican government is the best, but I think it does a profound job of establishing the benefits of the government that we ended up, right or wrong, choosing. I know I'm being way too equivocal there, because let's face it, if you were just going off of Federalist 10 and that was your Bible, then any other form of government would just be a big balderdash. Doesn't close the debate, but I think it makes some very strong points. And I think without considering these strong points, we don't really have a very intelligent discussion of the things that are going on. Well, let's see here. The goal has not been met, and that's okay, because, like, frankly, I'm kind of tired anyway. But we ended up with Republican government and rule by tired bloggers being neck and neck, 42%. So I would say probably 5 of you think Republican government is best. 5 of you, likely with tongue firmly in cheek, voted for rule by tired bloggers, meaning the other 2 of you believed that a pure democracy. And not even one of us agrees with Aristotle that aristocracy is the best. So there it is. Let's call it a stream. Not in stream. We want music. There we go. John Pontorero 10. This one goes to 11. I'm not sure I understand that one. Art 10. Oh, I get what you're okay. Yes, this one goes to 11. Thank you, Curtis. Great stream. Worthy discussion analysis. It is important to examine the premise documents. Agreed. Love to Cassie. Government in a half shell. Turtle power. Government by turtles. All right. Let's thank and promote everybody. Lizzie Armstrong, thank you for being here, for the kind comments, and please everybody check out her material, the beautiful countryside of Australia, her lovely birds, and some car events, and probably some other things too. John Pontorero, wonderful musician. Thank you so very much for that super chat. 99 cents. Thank you. God bless you, sir. You're way too generous. But, I'm not asking you to stop being generous. Reminding me of Star Trek E. Prebnista. Maybe we need a government by Kirk. Resolute Germ, another wonderful creator here. Please check out his material, his watch parties. He's off and on with State of the Grid. He's on with Admiral Teague. He's on with Gorilla's Censored Random Thoughts. Welcome. Thank you very much. And please check out his material. Show him some love. Tell him the Tired Blogger sent you, and he'll at least know what the hell you're talking about. PvP, hail to the chief. He's the one we all say hail to. Check out his music. He's introduced me to some wonderful music, along with John Pontorero, who is suggesting we need a turtleocracy. I could be wrong. I know I'm keen on the Federalist Papers, but more and more I'm beginning to think that maybe a turtleocracy would be no worse than what we've got. A government of watery tarts distributing blades might be legitimate. All right, who else do we have here? Scooby, Scooby, Scooby-Doo. Scooby, Scooby, Scooby-Doo. Roger Waters' fifth wife is divorcing him. He needs to marry Greta. Snortopoopas Cuber. Welcome, welcome, my favorite polar bear. I think you had the phrase of the stream. What was it? I'll take Constitutional Republic for 200, Alex? No, that wasn't it. I hate being a senior sometimes. Too many Muslims want to kill the West. Here it is. Both Anwar Sadat and Menachem Begin were classified as terrorists when they were young. Both became heads of state later and received Nobel Peace Prizes. The world is weird. DJ Ronnie G, another wonderful creator here. Please check out his material. He's got a lot of sci-fi stuff, some watch parties. Often he's on various panels, and you'll learn some stuff from him. So please check him out. DJ Ronnie G, check him out. Cassie's coming back. All right, Cassie. All right, Cassie. Yeah, big stretch. Oh, there it is. I'm always wanting to get that big stretch. Yes, Cassie. Yes, Cassie. I can't. She's my love. She's the best doggy. I wish I could get the AI to appropriately reproduce her. I've got a photo of her somewhere, but... And I believe... You're welcome, Curtis and Cassie. Turtles forever. Turtle power. And Cassie. I wonder who our modern Kissinger is now. Good question. Rubio? The guy with 4 jobs? I don't know. All right. Well, right. I don't know that I don't want to go into a great big long spiel, but I do want you to know that whatever else the Federalist Papers may have established, I think that they do help establish that you are smart enough and virtuous enough to run your own life. You don't need a big government or a big corporation or a big church telling you what to think, how to live, what to believe. You're smart enough to figure all that out on your own. And for lack of anything better to say, thank you very much for listening. I hope you all have a wonderful afternoon or evening. And furthermore, spoon! And if there's any ladies willing to spoon, what, Cassie? Oh, yeah, okay. I'll call it a stream. Fare thee well, y'all. Fare thee well.